Hello again. Well, a while ago, I told you that I was working on doing some research for a video about the sovereign citizen movement. This is something that I'm still doing research on because there's so much material to go through. But I will touch on it tonight as far as the basics and also the American Moors and the First Amendment auditors. Now, the thing that these three groups have in common, and they're often um believed to be inclusive of each other, which is not necessarily true. You can be all three, you can be one or two of these groups, you can be just one involved in just one of these groups, or none at all. There is some crossover in behavior and beliefs, but they're not exactly the same, as you'll find out. You'll find some links with more information down below, right under that all important like button and the subscribe button. Now, I'm going to start out talking about the First Amendment auditors, and they are pretty much what they sound like. Generally speaking, they are individuals who will go to various places, primarily government buildings and establishments that and basically check to make sure that First Amendment rights of speech, of rights of the freedom of press, and freedom to congregate, just for example, are all being that these the rights of these freedoms are of the citizens to have these freedoms are being upheld. The I know a few First Amendment auditors from online, don't know them personally, who are legitimate auditors who are are sincerely concerned with the rights of American citizens and their First Amendment rights as well as other constitutional rights. However, there's a select few that seem to be growing who tend to be more confrontational, who want to push the boundaries and are often rude and in your face when with regard to videotaping and asking questions. They have a tendency to say, to ask, you know, all kinds of information from government employees, but not give any information about themselves. They'll say, "I don't answer questions." Now, these are not all First Amendment auditors. They're just a certain group that follow these behaviors. Um, Oftentimes, they like to bait police officers and challenge them. At the same time, if they feel threatened or confronted by other people, um, they tend to over exaggerate the situation and call upon the very people that they like to bait and, get the police involved. However, oftentimes they don't want to give their correct um, data, like, name, address, phone number, those kinds of things, or the evidence that they have obtained through videotaping and other means. They often don't want to turn it over right away. Um, they sound like these types sound like conspiracy theory nuts to a certain extent. Like I said, there are legitimate auditors out there who are actually basically just looking out for other people's rights and don't break any laws and don't get confrontational um, unless it's necessary, and who are just regular people. So I hope everybody won't lump the idiots in with the legitimate auditors. Now, the sovereign citizens um, are similar in their behaviors of the more confrontational First Amendment auditors. Um, they don't they tend not to recognize the authority of most government agencies like the police, the courts, laws having to do with driving, taxes, home ownership, things like that. They're also known in some places as a free man of the land or freeman of the land. Um, it's said that their roots are based in white supremacy. However, I would certainly never say that all sovereign citizens are bigots or white supremacists. Would never say that, but it's said that that's where their basic tenets arose from. A lot of their beliefs having to do with their rights and the lack of jurisdiction from courts and police and those type of people. They claim to base it on the Constitution. However, a lot of the information they have is wrong information or misinterpreted information, and they also use a source called Black's Law Dictionary, which is not a law book, but a definition of law terminology. Um, like I said, there's a lot more to it. I will be linking, putting some links, but a lot of what the problem with sovereign citizens, and sometimes Moors will take this route as well, is what they'll do is they will bog down the court systems with uh, false liens and claims and lawsuits, and they're considered domestic terrorists, and their biggest weapon is paper terrorism. They teach all kinds of fallacies having to do with law and the courts. Some of them that are more well known are Harvey Dent being one. I don't know if he's a true sovereign citizen. He just seems to be a scammer because most of what I know of him is about him charging money to teach other sovereign citizens how to get around having to pay taxes or their bills or to follow certain laws. And some of these people will put out a lot of money to get documentation and other types of paperwork in order to file claims and do other things. And in the long run, he knows that what he's teaching them is not true. And to my knowledge, there has never been one sovereign citizen or Moorish lawsuit against court jurisdiction or the police that has been successful. Now, there may be some out there that I'm not aware of. I do know that there are at least 20 states that have laws in regard to helping them, having protection from um, paper terrorism and false liens, that type of thing. Georgia is one of them. They started, as far as I know, they started working on the laws back in 2012, having to do with the paper terrorism. If you remember, there's also been some police officer killings involving sovereign citizens in Georgia. I believe it was in North Georgia as well, not too many years ago. Um, in some cases, not all, of course, there are some who are sincerely, they think that they um, are not subject to federal laws and and they don't consider driving laws and things like that, like speeding, requirement to have a driver's license, requirement to have a tag or anything like that. That some of them sincerely believe they really do not have to have these things because this is what they've been taught. There are others who, like I said, like Harvey Dent and some others who are their basic game is scamming, and a lot of what they do will they'll file false claims, of course, like I said, false liens. Um, they have a tendency of squatting, for example, and there's been a few cases where they've noticed a vacant residence or building. Sometimes they're not entirely vacant. Sometimes someone's on vacation or whatever the case may be, and then the owner will come home or come to the property that they own and find someone living in them, and they have claimed ownership as squatters and claiming their sovereign status as giving them the right to claim this property. And basically, again, paper terrorism. They draw it out through the courts until a lot of people will either give up or go broke trying to fight uh, these criminal acts. There are some who are quite aggressive. Again, uh, the ones who are confrontational, they um, they push their Second Amendment rights to the limit. Like open carry situations that are meant to provoke police and other agencies. And some of these so-called authorities will claim that there is a type of paperwork. One of the claims is that when you're born, a certain amount of money goes into a secret government account, and that's attached to your social security number, and you can attach this account or access this account through certain documents you can get through the sovereign citizens groups, and use these documents to pay your bills or buy a car or whatever the case may be, which is highly illegal. It doesn't work, but they still sell this idea to other sovereign citizens. Now, the Moors tend to be of African descent, and they base uh, a lot of their belief system, it seems, on the basis that they are the true indigenous people of the United States, and a lot of them believe that this is based on the Moroccan Treaty of 1887, which is also known as the Treaty of Peace and Friendship or the Treaty of Marrakesh, that was made between Morocco and United States, uh, beginning in 1700s. There was the workings of the governments together. Now, this treaty, as far as I could tell, and like I said, it's one of the things I'm going to link below. And I looked under Yale Press, among other sources. And from my understanding, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship has nothing to do with Moorish citizenship or indigenous rights of Moors in the United States. It has to do with war and commerce primarily, and basically that it's like if a United States citizen is in Morocco and a crime is committed by them, they have to face, and the same if a Moroccan was in the United States, they would have to face whatever laws and penalties would be carried out in that country. And if they were victims of crime, then they would have the same rights as the citizens of that country if they were in the other place. It's a little convoluted, but basically it really doesn't have anything to do with any rights of the Moorish people to claim native status. except that they believe that many of them believe that because of their African roots, that they were the first people and that no government or society predates them. To some extent, science and even the Bible support this. However, that does not grant them a blanket rights to every country in the world. There is no one people. It's basically like saying, if someone from Asia came over here and said, you know what, your indigenous people are descendants of our indigenous people. Therefore, we have the right to claim this land as our own. Pretty much the same thing. So, like I said, a lot of it's convoluted and confusing to me, may not be to everyone. Um, and if you know me personally, a lot of people would consider me a hippie type that supports the idea of free thinking, of supporting yours and other people's rights, constitutional rights, and human rights, especially. However, in the cases of these groups, the certain, not all, First Amendment auditors, certain but not all sovereign citizens, and certain but not all Moors, American Moors, um, they seem to be basically just wanting to take advantage of the legal and government system and basically I want all the advantages and none of the responsibilities of being a citizen in this land. I don't want to follow the laws, but I want my rights. You can't call me this and you can't prevent me from doing that. Um, the problem is, instead of it dying out, it's becoming more prevalent because there's so much false information being put out there and so many other people becoming victims of the fallacies rather than going out and finding these things out for themselves. They're believing people that they trust. Their community, some community leaders, some church leaders, some neighborhood leaders, family members, other people that they know and trust or have been told to trust. Um, in some cases, the sovereigns and Moors, they have their own legal system, their own hierarchies in society, their particular societies. And like I said, one of the biggest hazards is that they're clogging up our legal system with nonsense paperwork. It's not totally nonsense because in the long run, some of them are going to realize that they've been taught the wrong things, that they were given false information. But there are always going to be those that no matter what happens, no matter how many fines they have to pay, how many sentences they have to be subject to by the courts, there are always going to be those who feel like they're in the right, other people are in the wrong, and there's nothing you can do to change their minds. So, what I suggest is if you encounter situations or know somebody who does involving these groups, that I would just educate yourself on what your local laws and well, brain blank, your local laws and statutes are involving some of these things they claim, and basically don't confront them to the point of violence, but don't be don't be fooled or pushed around by these groups either who feel like they have superiority over the average citizen. So just do your homework, do your research, um, protect yourself if necessary, legally speaking, and let me know what you think. Have you had any experience dealing with this? I know people who have. I haven't personally, um, but I do follow some channels that cover these groups and other things. And hopefully this was interesting to you, and that these links that I'm going to be posting will help um, educate you on these subjects if it is of interest. So again, tell me what you think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Hit the like button if you wish. Subscribe if you like me. Not really. Now, seriously, likes and subscribes do help my channel, but it's I want you to only use those if you truly want to. So I'm working on some more stuff, and I will probably be getting some of it to you in a couple of days. And for those who have been asking about my book, um, some of you already know what it's about. There's actually two books I'm working on. One of them is a parody of another book that some people know about. The second book that I'm working on is more like it's part of the basis of the newsletter I hope to put out with recipes and tips and tricks on saving money and that sort of thing. But I'll do another video on that pretty soon and be more clear about that. So I'll tell you good night for now. And like I said, let me know what you think. Give me suggestions or corrections if you wish. I can take constructive criticism. In fact, I look forward to it. Take care and good night.